Hi everyone, welcome back to AP Psychology with me, Miss Baines, your teacher, where you could take advantage of being able to pause and rewind me as I deliver you our latest content. So go ahead and grab those colored markers, get nice and comfy, and of course, don't forget our very important binder notes that go in lockstep order with this video called Unit 9, Video 3, Antisocial Relations, which you can find in your new Unit 9 binder notes on pages 8 and 9. I'll see you on the other side. Hi there and welcome back to our third set of notes in our social psychology unit. As you can see from our learning targets here, we are going to be going ahead and discussing all things antisocial. So first up, I really want to spend just a minute here talking and really reminding you about the word antisocial. And we saw it in our abnormal psychology unit or our clinical psychology unit. And I wanted to remind you that antisocial does not mean that someone is shy, right? Don't think of it as somebody not being social, right? Think of it as the opposite of a behavior that is pro-social. That would be one who promotes and encourages positive interactions, right? Altruistic behavior and kindness. So that means the opposite is antisocial then. Right? It's the opposite. It's aggressive. It's prejudiced. It's things that do not promote kindness or positive feelings in a social interaction. So it's really good just to kind of have that as a foundation of knowledge here as we go ahead and start talking about this antisocial behavior. We're going to start with the word prejudice, and it simply means prejudging, right? It's an unjustifiable, normally negative attitude towards a group and its members. And that group is often one that is different from you, obviously, right? From a different culture, ethnic, or gender group. And the components include our beliefs, which are those stereotypes, right? The emotions around kind of the interaction with those groups of people, with hostility and the fear and the predisposition to act, right? Our prejudice and our beliefs predispose us to them and discriminate, right? It's important for you to note that prejudice often works not at the conscious level, of course. It is at the conscious level for some people, but some people even more so at the unconscious level, and have these things called microaggressions that many psychologists and sociologists would say, which is a more of a knee-jerk response than it is a conscious decision to feel or behave in a certain way towards a certain group. And my question here is, just to kind of play devil's advocate, is does that make it more or less excusable? Probably not, right? But it does make it more difficult to combat, right? Prejudice, if it is unconscious or subconscious. So what are the causes of being prejudiced? Well, as soon as you have any kind of social inequities, the haves versus the have-nots, it causes hostility and even fear. But that kind of opens the door for prejudice and discrimination and social divisions and identities, mostly based off of what you can see, which is looks, right? And behavior and how somebody acts. And you know that when we identify that someone is different from you, scapegoating, which means that there is something difficult going on in your life, and then the thought patterns and the cognitions, and then also, right, those cognitions, those habits, patterns of thought where we automatically tie one's behavior to their skin color. Here's the thing though, those thought patterns are simply habits, and these ones have to be actively and intentionally broken. There's got to be some action that is taken here, right? It's the in-group versus the out-group. Super important. I believe all of life, right, for all people to identify for what an in-group versus an out-group is. And if it's one of those things that seems so simple, right? Why are we even putting a name to it? But in an in-group, well, in my opinion, in this case, putting a name to it allows us to change those cognitive processes, right? Those thought processes around people who are different from us. So So it's super important to have this kind of basic knowledge. And an in-group are people with whom one shares a common identity. So when you hear someone talking and they say us or we, that is an in-group. They are identifying their in-group. They are people that they identify with, that they can be as simple as people that you sit with in the lunchroom, or people that you play sports with on a team, or people that you study with, people that you are a family with, an ethnic group, a religious group, your nationality or the country that you come from, all the groups that we identify with. It's very big, but as soon as you are identifying the us, right, you identify the them, based on the people who don't sit at your lunch table with you, who you do not have the same skin color with, or you from which you are not from the same country or citizens, or they are the out-group. Those perceived as different from one's in-group, those are the out-group. And as soon as you start identifying the us and the you, we identify the those and the them is where it gets really complicated. The in-group bias is the tendency to favor one's own group, and that can look many different ways. It's important to name that because, of course, you're biased towards your own group. You identify with them and therefore you have a bias. You understand their tendencies, their thought process, and all of those seems right, seems normal to you, and therefore you identify with anything outside of that seems abnormal or different and therefore inferior. A good example would be sports rivalry, right? And this, although it seems kind of frivolous compared to the very serious in-groups and out-groups of skin color and nationality and ethnicity, sports rivalries are one of the biggest ones in colleges, right? Take my mom's state college, which is Duke University. She lives on the same block as Duke University. She follows female basketball. That's all she follows, even though Duke has lots of other sports. And the other out-group would be University of North Carolina, right? The blue colored of Duke is royal blue, and the light blue, baby blue colored is the University of North Carolina. And anywhere you go in North Carolina, Durham, North Carolina, where Duke University is, there's either the royal blue shirts everywhere or the light blue shirts everywhere. And that's how people identify as whether or not they're going to talk to each other oftentimes. Because if you're not a Duke fan, you're not my friend, right? It's a very light way of sort of being the us and the them, right? Sports rivalry really helps us to understand these us and them in a much lighter way, at least in my family. People take it pretty lightly. I guess some people don't. Okay, there's a blue-eyed, brown-eyed simulation. A really big thing happened back in the 1960s. This was Jane Elliott. She was a third-grade classroom teacher, and after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., she said, how in the world am I going to teach my third-grade students about discrimination and prejudice? She said, there is no way that I, a white woman, can just sit there and tell them and show them what they need. She wanted to have a way for them to experience it for themselves. And so this is a life-changing moment for them. And that's how important it was to her. So the blue-eyed, brown-eyed simulation, oftentimes called experiment, but it can't be a true experiment, right? Because her students were not randomly selected. So on day one, what she did was she identified all the brown-eyed and had them put on a collar that they just kind of like safety pinned around their neck. And she was very skilled in using things like confirmation bias, representativeness, heuristics, with prototyping, that kind of thing, in order to help her student just signed, sealed, and delivered. We're all in and identifying with the brown-eyed students as being inferior to the blue-eyed students, right? She intentionally went about doing that. And what you saw within minutes, and then really strongly within an hour, who were best friends in their third grade classroom turned on each other by the next day, okay? Right? She even did it in the same day, right after recess or something. And that next day, she flipped the script, and the blue-eyed students were now inferior, and the brown-eyed students were now superior. And then they put those little collars on again. Very skilled, very talented at helping her students kind of buy into it. Since they were younger and more naive, and it totally worked. right? You saw things like learned helplessness and self-fulfilling prophecies and stereotype threats. All of these things that we're going to talk about in this unit started happening. And she even says, and I highly encourage you to find her documentary. We're not going to have time to watch it together until after the exam. But she says, what you saw was a microcosm of society in my third grade classroom. And all of a sudden, there were the haves and the have-nots. How people live over a lifetime of feeling inferior and what that does to them. I really encourage you to watch the documentary. And this leads us nicely, or not so nicely, to what we call scapegoat theory. What prejudice is an outlet for anger by providing someone to blame. And I'm sure you've heard of scapegoat, right? That's exactly what it is. It's finding someone to put the blame on, right? And you have to look no further than really into our world, especially in American culture, in American history, to find examples. So for instance, in World War II, Americans, the United States, with Japanese internment camps after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the blaming of Jews in Nazi Germany for years of economic despair during World War II, and then the lashing out against the innocent Arab Americans, Muslim Americans after the Twin Towers attack on 9/11, and what happened there, right? There's already division and roots of prejudice that exist, and then something awful and traumatic like economic despair or like the attack of 9/11 happens, and people quickly go to scapegoating, and this leads to cognitive roots. These cognitive roots in our brains that we use and love shortcuts, right? We love these categories that we have, nice little file folders in our brain, and we've talked about this before within our developmental unit and even in our cognition units with schemas and concepts and prototypes. Our brain loves those, and it does not like it when things don't fit into those little file folders. So we quickly categorize people into groups, right, in those file folders. In our brain base, off easily identifiable traits, things that we can see, things of how people look and the way that they behave, and then anybody else who looks and behaves similarly, right? There are identifiable traits. Everyone else who has those acts the same way, right? We make it assumptions about anybody else, and anybody else that we identify in that group, right? That's our cognitive process of prejudice, and we have to first step to make it right in understanding these issues that we're having across the world, with particularly the United States, is identifying that it's a problem and it's something that you have to come back to. There's something called a just world phenomenon, and simply put, a just world phenomenon means that it's essentially an understanding where someone believes that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people, okay? It's really simple. Oftentimes subconscious, very subtle understandings, but the danger in this, although that seems pretty simple and innocent, the danger is that it results in victim blaming. And I'm going to get really serious here for a sec. Oftentimes when you hear people talking about sexual assault cases, even rape, well, they say things like, well, her skirt was really short, her shirt was cut really low, her boobs were hanging out, her butt was showing, right? She really was asking for it in a certain way. Wasn't she? She was at a party and she got wasted and she was drinking and she was asking for it then, wasn't she? That's victim blaming. Essentially, it is, well, you did something to deserve what you did by something that led it to it, therefore you deserved it. And it doesn't mean that we don't do things in our lives that would put people or ourselves in awful situations. That's not what it means, right? But it also, you have to make sure that you are understanding that the person is a victim, and even with the things that they did, that doesn't mean that they deserved what happened to them. It's a very controversial topic, but you should definitely think about it. All right, so what are some kinds of ideas around reducing prejudice? One is contact hypothesis, where stereotypes and prejudice towards groups will decrease as contact with the group increases. So think of like summer camps being at school and diverse groups being in the camp groups. But is this enough, right? Think about schools in Queens are so diverse. Is this enough? Research shows that by itself it is not enough. It is part of the solution, but there's got to be some intentionally educational techniques to address those social cognitions and perceptions. There's got to be some intentional things to break those thoughts and those habits.
I would describe my political views as the new right.
I'd say that I'm left.
Feminism today is man-hating.
I would describe myself as a feminist, 100%.
I don't believe that climate change exists.
We're not taking enough action on climate change.
I think it's about time these people got off their high horse and started looking for credible problems that actually exist.
It's absolutely critical that trans people have their own voice.
That's not right. You can't, you know, you're a man, be a man, or you're a female, be a female.
Women do need to remember that we need you to have our children.
Could I be friends with someone that says a woman's place is in the home?
Right, OK, well, I'm an expert at flat packs. If you have any trouble, just watch me.
So it looks like I've got your instructions here.
I think so.
Let me help you.
It's not just that bit there.
Describe what it is like to be you in 5 adjectives.
Okay, frustrating.
Dedicated.
Opinionated.
Lucky.
Ambitious.
Offensive.
Solemn. I have ups and downs.
Strong.
I want to say attacked, misunderstood.
Name 3 things you and I have in common.
We're both male, we're both confident, and we're both loudly spoken.
We know each other better than people who've known each other for 10 minutes should.
You seem quite ambitious and positive, and you've got this really, got a glow. Do you know what I'm saying? Your aura's pretty cool.
I'm sensing, are you former military or something?
People have said that, but there is no history. So are you then ex-military?
Yeah.
If you're ex-military, I'm very proud of you already.
Well,
So
I grew up in a bit of a rough state. I've experienced homelessness. I've known what it's like to have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely most grateful just for life.
We've only just met, but I think you're the sort of person that would listen to me and we'd have a discussion rather than an argument.
Yeah, you could hang out with, man.
let's go. Mind your hands.
Goodness sake.
You're right, mate.
Fitter than I look.
Perfecto.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
So basically, I think we just built a bar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here you are.
Each take a bottle and place it on its corresponding markings on the bar.
Attention, please now stand to watch a short film.
Feminism today is definitely an excuse for misandry, man-hating.
If somebody said to me that climate change is destroying the world, then I'd say that is total piffle.
So transgender, it is very odd. We're not set up to understand or see things like that.
I am a daughter, a wife. I am transgender.
I feel like the battle for feminism definitely isn't done. The fight is never going to be over, if I'm honest with you.
You now have a choice. You may go, or you can stay and discuss your differences over a beer.
I'm only joking.
You're happy for a second then?
Well, I'm having a drink.
I'm having a drink.
Yeah.
I want to discuss.
Beer.
Yeah, beer and discuss.
Cheers.
At the end of the day, mate,
About
I've
reaching
enjoyed
out to
working with
people,
you.
yeah. And, you know, even if you wanted to convince people about your point, the productive thing to do would be to sit down and have a
Engage,
beer.
engage.
I've been brought up in a way where everything's black and white, but life isn't black and white.
Yeah, I'm just me.
Yeah.
Smash the patriarchy.
I'll give you my mobile number, you give me yours, and we'll keep in touch. I'd have to tell my girlfriend that I'll be texting another girl. She might be a bit upset with that, but I'll have to get round that.
I'll have to tell my girl.
Okay, so aggression. Antisocial relations, right? We have to talk about aggression. This refers to a range of behaviors that result in both physical and psychological harm to oneself, others, or objects. And the type of behavior centers on harming another person, either physically or mentally. And there's a lot of debate on where this derives from, nature or nurture. There really are things that we have to consider for both sides of this argument. The biological influences, which would be more of the nature, right? Like genetic, right? So animals have been bred for aggressiveness. Just look at dog breeds for sport. And at times, for research, twin studies show aggression may be genetic. And with men who have more testosterone, aggression is possibly more linked to the Y chromosome. There's also neural influences. Some centers in the brain, especially in the limbic systems, right? Think about the amygdala, right? The amygdala and the frontal lobe are intimately involved with aggression. And then there's some biochemical influences, right? With animals, diminished amounts of testosterone due to castration, right? Animals will become more docile and calm. If you ever owned a dog and you had him neutered, you notice that their behavior becomes much more calm. If a person is injected with testosterone, aggression increases. So people who use testosterone, right, to get bigger or stronger when they're working out, they also become aggressive in their personality. Okay, so that biochemical component is definitely there. Prenatal exposure to testosterone also increases aggression in female hyenas. So it's not just a guy thing, but it's also a guy thing because of testosterone and cultural. Then what about kind of the learning and cultural, which would be more of the nurture aspect, right? With aggression. Aggression leads to desired outcomes. One learns to be aggressive, right? If someone is learning that, oh, if I act that way, I get what I want, right? If I want it seen more, you see aggressive tendencies more in individualistic than you do in a collectivist culture. And there's some cultural undertones of violence when those exist. There's a huge impact on violent tendencies in a population when the frustration aggression principle. People are aggressive. What kind of happens, right? So in which frustration, that this kind of theory says that frustration creates anger, which can generate aggression, meaning people won't be aggressive unless they are frustrated. Research has shown that this is true. It's a bit too simplistic and a bit too general, but you get the point. They do agree that the direct cause of most kinds of aggression is a negative effect or emotion, so there's something there. The excitation transfer, which is arousal from one experience, may carry over to an independent situation. The key here is the independent situation has to be heightened physically and then triggering aggression. So an example would be you just finished a high intensity workout, right? And when you get home, your little sister has taken something from your room or something without asking, or your little brother has taken something from your room without your permission, and it just triggers you. All of a sudden, you're like, you are more likely to respond aggressively due to your already heightened state from your pretty heightened workout, right? So that's all the excitation transfer. But what about stress? Stress impacts our aggression as well. Aversive events and people, studies show that those who are miserable make others miserable. And we are going to see that on the flip side. And our pro-social relation notes next. And stressful environments with high temperatures, air pollution, and noise have all been found to increase aggressive tendencies. As you can hear from downstairs in my apartment right now, I'm getting pretty frustrated hearing all of those noises. It's why you see a heightened crime rates in big cities, right? Oh, well, I should say in warmer places. Well, you should also see crime rates rise pretty significantly in the summer months. That's because people are trapped in the heat. And
there are 4 different aggression types. Physical aggression, harm and control through physical damage or by the threat. Verbal aggression, a communication intended to hurt another person or a communication perceived as having that intent, which can be spoken, written, or drawn. And relational aggression, which is the harming of others through purposeful manipulation and damage of their peer relationships. We also see aggression beginning in kids as young as toddlers, being 1 to 3 years old, which are the most aggressive. Toddlers often rely on physical aggression to resolve their conflicts in order to get what they want. As children grow older, they learn to inhibit their aggressive impulses and resolve conflicts using non-aggressive means, such as compromise and negotiation. Men tend to be more physically aggressive than women, causing serious injuries and even death to their partners or other people when they lead with their aggression. Females are much more likely than males to engage in relational aggression, defined as intentionally harming another person's social relationships, feelings of acceptance, or inclusion within a group. Hormonal differences may account for the difference in aggressiveness between men and women. Men have higher levels of testosterone than women have, and testosterone is linked to aggression. Use of anabolic steroids has also been associated with increases in aggression. James Dabb and his colleagues have reported that men who are imprisoned for aggressive crimes have testosterone levels than men who are imprisoned for non-aggressive crimes. Finally, instrumental aggression. Intent to harm another person, but the motivation is not emotional, rather it is to advance a cause or to achieve something, associated with goal-oriented and planned, hidden, or controlled behavior. Harming the person is used to obtain some other goal. Experts on terrorism think that the acts of terrorism are acts of instrumental aggression to make political statements. There is also ample evidence of a link between alcohol and aggression, including evidence from experimental studies showing that consuming alcohol can cause an increase in aggression. Alcohol disrupts cognitive executive functions that help us organize, plan, achieve goals, and inhibit inappropriate behaviors. Sometimes alcohol is deliberately used to promote aggression. It has been standard practice for many centuries to issue soldiers some alcohol before they went into battle, both to increase aggression and reduce fear.
That wraps up our notes for the antisocial relations. Make sure that you stay tuned for the next 2 sets of notes, and everybody have a great day. We're almost finished. Bye now.